In this video, we're going to connect to our newly created EC2 instance. We'll do this two ways. First, through a Java SSH shell, and the second via our local command line. The first way will be less convenient and stable, but it works on both Macs and Windows without the need to install any software. So it should work for everyone. The second way will be geared towards users who own a Mac. So if you fall into that group, feel free to skip ahead to the second method. Okay, let's log into the EC2 instance dashboard. Note that I recommend using Firefox when trying to connect to your instance via browser, because its security settings seem to work by default. So note that if you use Chrome or Safari, you may need to change your security settings to launch the SSH client. Once you're in the dashboard, to connect to an instance, you simply select the instance from the list and then hit the Connect button. After you do that, a modal pop-up should display with information on connecting to your instance. Make sure that the Java SSH client is selected from the I would like to connect with section. Here we'll need to provide a username and private key path to connect to our instance. Since this is a third-party configuration, the username should be provided in the documentation. So let's take a look at that back in the dashboard. You'll see the Usage Instructions tab at the bottom of the screen, and that should provide us some more information. Yep, you'll see that it says you can connect to your instance using your private key and the username Bitnami. So there you go. The username will be Bitnami when we connect to our instance. Let's enter that in the connection form. Note that if you didn't use Bitnami and used a blank AMI with no configurations other than the operating system, the username you'll use is EC2-user by default. And if you used another third-party AMI, you'll want to check out their documentation for the correct default username. The next thing that we need is the path to our private key that we downloaded. This will be specific to your machine, so you can't use my path, but you'll want to copy and paste your path into the form. Note that you need to include the name of the key at the end of the screen, so I'll type mine. That's it for this section. Let's now launch the Java SSH client. Remember, I recommend using Firefox, as I've had issues with both Chrome and Safari in the past. If any security warnings do pop up, make sure that you select Allow and Remember so that you'll be able to run the client successfully. Looks like we're in. We've successfully connected to our instance. Woo! As you can see, you can run Linux commands via the browser and interact with your server through the shell. And it looks like the default project installed is called project. We'll want to replace these files eventually with our own later. I think this project is located in the opt/bitnami directory, but I'm going to go back to the root directory to make sure. Yep. Sure enough, that's correct. So when we transfer our project files later in the series, it will be to the opt/bitnami folder, which I'm sure is also mentioned in the Bitnami documentation that you should read for reference. But at any rate, let's now see if we can do this via the command line, as it's much nicer in my opinion. You don't have to change any settings with your browser to make it work, and it's very reliable. If you're on Windows, you'll want to download a program called Putty if you do not like using the Java SSH client. Let's launch Terminal and navigate to the folder where our key is located. According to AWS, we'll have to change the permissions of our key to not be publicly viewable to use it. So let's use the chmod command to change that. Oh, note that you'll only have to change the permissions once. Okay, now we'll use SSH command to log in that AWS has been so kind as to leave an example of. I'm just going to copy this over to my command line and run it. Perfect, we're in. If we navigate to the folder directory, we'll notice that it's the same as the Java client, just as it should be. When you're ready to configure your instance, you'll be able to connect to it via either of the two methods above. Remember, if you're on Windows, you'll want to stick to the first method or download PuTTY. In the next video, we're going to configure our servers for Django.